Good morning, our viewers and followers. Welcome to the Women's Voice, a platform by Women Rights Initiative. I'm happy to be here this year. Happy New Year. And I thank God that has led us through. And today, our discussion is going to be centered around sexual violence, the silent predator. And we have a guest. I'll let her introduce herself before we go deeper into today's discussion.
Thank you so much, Annette. Hello, everyone. My name is Angella Asiimwe, a women rights activist, lawyer, entrepreneur, and governance enthusiast. I'm also the founder and CEO of Voice Consults, a legal and media consultancy firm that promotes, protects, and the rights of women, girls, and other marginalized groups through media advocacy and legal aid. Thank you. I'm so delighted and honored to be here today under Women's Voice, courtesy of Worry. It's an honor and privilege being here with you.
Thank you so much, Angela, and we are happy to have you. And we will begin with our discussion and conversation. We would want to understand, first of all, what sexual violence is so that we can get familiar with that term. And also for our viewers out there, I know that it might not be a new topic, but for some, it can be a new topic. Please explain to us what sexual violence is.
Okay, thank you so much, Annette. So, sexual violence, what people need to know, it's the silent pandemic that we've been having. And it didn't start recently. Most people are saying it's the COVID pandemic period when it started, but it started way back. And you'll understand that after I define it. So, sexual violence is defined as an expression, whether the act is physical or psychological in nature, that is committed, threatened, or attempted against a person without the person's consent. And it includes sexual assault, it includes harassment, stalking, indecent exposure, sexual harassment, and exploitation, among others. It's also important for us to know that sexual violence happens when any sexual encounter or activity happens to the victim without their consent. Now, that's the other part that most people always wonder. So, the part of consent, what do you mean by consent? But before we go to consent, one thing we need to understand is that there are several forms of sexual violence, and some of them constitute name calling. Those are the ones that people don't take serious. Like someone can name call you, but in a sexual manner. Then there's also another form, which is unwanted and persistent sexual advances. And then intimate partner violence, that is to do with people that are intimate, are having a relationship altogether, married or not. And then there's also unwanted and inappropriate physical touchings, there's rape, there's defilement. Currently, there's a lot of online sexual violence. I see we are on online platforms. So when some people go online, they are sexually abused. Then there's also stalking. And in young people, there's a lot of sex for marks, especially those young people who are in universities, in primary schools, in secondary schools, as you see currently, where we're having issues of sexual harassment being on the rise, especially in young girls. We realize that in the pandemic, it has not only happened in their schools, because schools were closed for over 2 years. So they were happening at home. So the sexual violence that was at home, where you'll have sex for favors, you'll have a relative, a male relative or female, because sexual harassment is either way. It's both happens in female and also male. So where someone will tell you, I'll bring you something when I come back home. So there are sex favors that are asked, yet a young person can't consent. So that's why we bring in the issue of consent. And what we need to understand is consent cannot be given by someone who is below the age of 18 years, because that's one thing that is always disturbing people, where people wonder, okay, so if I asked for sex or a sexual favor and this person allowed, why would you say that I'm harassing them? And they forget that sexual harassment, there are issues to do with consent, and a young person can't give consent. So consent is when someone who is above 18 agrees or gives permission or says yes to a sexual activity with other persons. So consent is freely given. That's one thing we need to understand. That if we are defining consent, we can even use an acronym called FRIES. Consent is freely given, it's reversible, it's informed, enthusiastic, and specific. So it's always freely given, and all persons in a sexual situation must feel free or feel free that they are able to say yes or no or stop the sexual activity at any point. You listen to that word, any point. So someone is allowed at any point to say no, even if the person is above 18, you're having sexual activity and the person says stop there. It doesn't matter where you've reached. So someone has to freely give the consent at whichever time. So when we're talking about consent, only yes means yes. Sometimes we've had incidences where people tell you, but a yes of any woman is a no of any woman means yes. No, my friends. Only yes means yes. An absence of an answer or an absence of a no still means no. Only an informed person or sober can also say yes. I'll give you a clear example of I'm a survivor of sexual harassment, but then by that time, as young as only 14 years of age, but even if as 20 years of age, the time as sexually harassed, as intoxicated. So as given alcohol in pretense that it was soda or a sweet drink. So giving me that alcohol, even if I was 50 years, and I intoxicating or giving me that drug, that means that I didn't consent. So someone can't consent when
I think that the network is not doing us the best, but
okay.
we
Thank you so much. Annette, I think your network is off.
I can hear you now and see you clearly. I think that you got off,
All right.
and a few of the words that you spoke last
Thank you.
were not heard. But we still continuing with the sexual violence discussion today. Angela, please paint for us the picture. Is it different in Uganda because we considering our social norms and cultural beliefs? I think that these are things that sustain sexual violence.
Annette, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Maybe I can proceed as Annette gets back on. So maybe the other thing we need to understand under sexual violence is the concept of sexual harassment. So sexual harassment pertains to any unwelcome advance or behavior or a sexual nature that is expressed verbally, non-verbally, or physically. So both, like I said, men and women can experience sexual harassment from individuals who are of the opposite or the same sex. So you can be sexually harassed by anyone, whether the same sex or opposite sex. However, women are usually harassed more, as we've seen, especially during the pandemic. Thank you.
Yes, please. And can you hear me now, Angela?
Annette?
Can you hear me now?
Okay, I can see Annette has gone off. So I'll continue. Maybe what the other thing we need to understand is that girls and women are especially vulnerable to sexual harassment in areas like any area you can fall victim of sexual harassment in public places. Currently, we're having a lot of people moving in public transport, at homes. Um, when you go to even places of worship, any place, schools, work, everywhere, there's a lot of sexual harassment that needs to be addressed.
Okay, thank you, Angela. for sharing with us. And
Annette? So girls and women are at a risk of experiencing sexual harassment merely by walking outside. So before we would say that they are at risk of experiencing sexual harassment when they go out of their homes, but COVID-19 pandemic has proved to us wrong, that it's not just outside their homes, even inside their homes. Many young people, young women, young girls have been living with abusers. More than 50% of street sexual harassment incidences happen in highly walkable streets, but then we need to understand that even in homes, there's been a lot of sexual harassment. That's why you see the rate of teenage pregnancy rose from 25% that was in the 2016 demographic survey to over 44%. That was a big rise. And that's why we need to address this silent pandemic. So the women, girls, and men, even boys, experience unwelcome and catcalling, whistling, and sexual gestures, whichever place they be. In addition, 50% of women report being folded and groped, and 71% of women report being followed. Sometimes sexual harassment can happen when you're moving. Let's say you're going to the market and someone is following you. Every time you get out of your home, they are catcalling you. Then the next thing you know, when they get to you, they touch you in a sexual manner. So that is also another form of sexual harassment. The other one is in regards to sexual favors, that in situations of quid pro quo, a perpetrator will demand sexual favors of a girl or woman directly or indirectly. Sometimes people demand for these sexual favors. Someone might say, let's say you're going to ask for a job and you've applied, and then the person will tell you, so we after we are done with this interview, can we meet in the evening? Then you're like, evening about what? And they'll tell you, you know what to do. So some are direct while others are indirect. So you go in the evening and the next thing the person is telling you, we have to meet in the hotel, and they keep telling you, you know what to do. So sometimes it's favors such as requesting a nude photo. Sometimes, we have, the world has gone digital. So sometimes someone will say, can you kindly send me a photo? And then you send a photo. They're like, show some skin, show some skin. So requesting a nude photo is also another sexual harassment form, due to the nature of perpetrators are often men and women also sometimes, but these are people who are in positions of power and influence most times, such as teachers. Now we know children have gone back to school. When we are in our homes, the fathers, the uncles, the moms, all those people that are in positions of power and influences. And then also in universities, we have the lecturers. In places of work, we have the employers who can also make offers, sexual favors, and also say, I'll increase maybe your salary or something like that. Patra, are you able to hear me?
thank you so much, Angela, for sharing
So Patra, you
with
can
us.
hear me, but I can't see Annette anymore. All right. So Patra, can I proceed till Annette is back, or we wait for Annette?
I think that it's the issue with the network, but for followers and viewers that have just logged on, this is the Women's Voice, a platform where we share and learn issues that affect women. And today we are with Angella Asiimwe, an activist and a lawyer, speaking to us about sexual violence, the silent predator. And we have been speaking about issues of consent and learning how violence manifests, sexual violence manifests, and speaking about those small things that people don't really take serious, but forms of sexual violence. And we were also trying to speak about the culture and the social norms that sustain sexual violence before. And I think that Angela is back. Uh, I think it's the
Yes,
issue of the network, but I think we can continue. Please
okay.
continue speaking with us about
So,
sexual violence.
Annette, did you hear the part of consent and sexual harassment?
Yes, please. It was clear.
Okay, okay, thank you. Yeah, so I was talking about sexual favors, but then the other thing we need to understand is sexual harassment is mainly as a result of power imbalance. Most times people wonder and say maybe it's an issue to do with someone, the way they are dressed or what, but we need to understand that the main cause of sexual harassment is as a result of power imbalance between men and women or girls and men. So it's systematic with societies shaped by negative norms that give men or boys more power than women and girls. So the negative norms that we have in our communities. So don't look for causes of sexual harassment from maybe your books or what. It's within us. So the negative norm allows men or boys to control the actions and bodies of women and girls, which results into this violence. Thank you so much. So that's it mainly to do with sexual harassment, sexual violence, the forms, then things to do with consent and sexual favors. Thank you so much, Annette.
Yeah, you're welcome. So speaking about consent, can your partner or spouse, because you spoke a little about probably marital rape, and
Mhm.
but we live in a world where we have a lot of relationships that are not formal, and then people wonder if you're in such a relationship, can your spouse abuse you sexually, or whatever happens is not considered sexual violence because this relationship is somehow not formal, and you know.
Thank you so much, Annette. So, in regards to sexual harassment, the other form that we didn't talk about is what we call intimate partner violence. So, intimate partner violence is mainly with a partner, whether you are married formally or not, or you're dating. You know, these days, Baganda call it kaundoka kuvyedinisa. So, whether you're living with your partner and you're non legally married, all those things. So, consent doesn't have anything to do with marriage or not marriage. All it has to do with is when someone is above 18 years, that's when they give permission to say or no. Meaning you can be legally married, but then that day you don't feel like having sex. So in Uganda, our laws are very clear. But then one of the things that we are ensuring that it goes through is the Sexual Offences Bill, because under the Sexual Offences Bill, it clearly addresses issues to do with marital rape, which isn't in our penal code. In our penal code, they didn't stipulate exactly what marital rape is. They didn't even put it there as a crime. But then as the world evolves, as we go into an era where sexual violence is a pandemic of its own, we get to understand that even in marriages, many people are survivors of marital rape and it needs to be addressed. So, yes, that is also a crime. That's why as a senior member of FIDA, even when I was an employee of FIDA for over 3 years, one of the cases that we had that was happening a lot was marital rape. And most of the times it caused fistula. I'll give you a scenario. Someone or a woman goes to have birth and then they'll have a cesarean. And then sometimes they'll even make sure that they work on them. And when they're operating and all doing all these things, they stick and they work on the woman. And the next thing you know, when they get back home, this person has gone through a surgery. So someone or the partner, the male partner, will force them to have sex. So that is what we call marital rape. So yes, there's rape in marriages, a lot of it, and most of the times it causes fistula, and then other times it causes divorce. Because some people will realize that at the end of the day, I can't stand this man that forces me to have sex all the time. So what we need to understand, like I told you, let's consider the acronym that we said consent is FRIES. And FRIES will know that F stands for freely given, consent has to be freely given, whether you're in a marriage, relationship, or not. It is reversible. You can have sex or any sexual activity, and at any time you're allowed to say no. So it is reversible consent. Three, it is informed. Someone has to let you know that, you know what, girlfriend or my wife or my husband, it is enthusiastic, and lastly it is specific. Yes, and that is it mainly in regards to that. Thank you.
I'm so happy that we are speaking about such issues, especially in Busoga region, Angela, where we focus our work. We've had a lot of cases where women are harassed or raped when they go for I think when they go to shrines and herbalists, and we've had where they tell them that it is only through sex that they can probably heal them. We've had a lot of issues where girls that work in homes are sexually harassed and abused because in Busoga region there is a high rate of school dropouts, unfortunately, and most of the girls are found in homes working as
Yeah,
maids, and so there's
yeah,
been a lot of sexual harassment in homes, but also there are still, as we've been speaking, beliefs that still sustain sexual abuse, and it's a privilege that today we are speaking even about the small issues, like when someone believes that if they've spent money on you, they've bought you a lot of chips and taken you out for more than 5 times, like they are it's okay for them to own you, and it's okay for them to do whatever they want with you. And a few
mm,
things where people believe that if a woman wears a mini skirt and
mm,
and they are sexually abused, it is okay, it's their fault. And I think that the society out there needs to know that it's never okay for someone to be sexually abused, and it's never their fault,
yeah,
and to come out to speak openly about such cases. And you also spoke about the laws. uh,
mm,
Maybe we need to understand more about the
okay,
existing laws, and if someone is sexually abused, how can they seek for help or receive justice, because it's also an issue where people don't really know where to begin from and what to do and
mm,
what not to do. And and considering that most of the survivors are so vulnerable, and seeking for justice also um, necessitates someone having money or having resources. Please share with us how someone can begin seeking for justice in case they're sexually abused, and how they can go on with the process.
okay. Okay, thank you so much for that. So one of the things we need to understand, or one of the things that people need to understand, there is there's existing legal framework in regards to fighting sexual violence in all the areas that people be in. Also in Uganda, we have laws, and one of the laws, as I told you, is the Penal Code Act. And in regards to the Penal Code Act, it is clear that one of the cases that offenses that is there is rape, there's defilement, and many more. But then most of the times, one of the things that people don't understand issues to do with marital rape. But then if you focus on all these things, you get to understand marital rape is also one of the offenses that needs to be introduced as an issue or an offense that is in regards to sexual violence. And that's why I say that if we have the passing of the sexual offences bill, that's one of the things that will be catered for. Also, in our constitution, it's clear that someone who is below the age of 18 is a young person, so they can't consent. So some of the things are there. And also under the article which provides rights of women and girls. And one of the things we have to understand when we are in our communities, there are many, many referral pathways that we can have or places we can report to. And we can start within the family itself. If you are in a family where the space is safe, quote me right, where there's a safe space. And under safe space, I mean that we're in a family and someone is able to report, someone is able to share when you're sexually abused, you can easily talk to your elders. That's okay. Okay, network had gone off. So the other pathway is in regards to police. Most of the times in our communities, I know sometimes people say a police station is very far. You can even start with in Eastern Uganda. We have Worry. Worry does excellent work, and I applaud you, Annette, and the entire team. Rose, Rose is my personal friend, and I've seen the kind of work you people do. It's a privilege to live in a time where we have shelters like Worry Shelter in Eastern Uganda. Previously, me, the time I was living in Kampala, having a shelter like Worry, when you're in Eastern Uganda, you know that the best place to go to is Worry. So there are many, many other referral pathways. There's FIDA, there's Women Pro Bono Initiative, there's Uganda Human Rights Commission. There are very many. But if we are to focus at the community level, let's focus more on the police, the local leaders. But then we need to understand that there are cases where you don't need to just go to the LC, because when you go to the LC, the next thing you'll know they are bargaining for this girl, and then the LC will tell you, you know what, pay for this girl, and the girl will get married off. So those are things we need to avoid. That's why most times it's very important when it's an issue to do with a sexual violence, especially rape, defilement, go directly to the police. But also remember that you need to get checked up, because most times that's one thing that makes people suffer. Because when you find your daughter or young girl that has been raped, them to police, and the next thing they're asking, so when they come to the scene, they can't even trace where the girl was sexually abused from or defiled from. So that's the other challenge that we have. So people need to understand that when you find or when this happens, you need to keep the evidence, the dress the girl was putting on, where they were raped, keep it there. And then make sure you go to when you go to police, one of the things you have to demand first is to get medical attention. And then also this person should get prep. Most of the times when people are sexually harassed, they don't know that um, they have a privilege of even accessing PrEP or the drug that you can get, which can help you protect you from HIV. So things that people need to understand at this day and era. And that's why I say, Annette, that we are privileged to be born at a time when these things are there. At the time I gave birth, these things were not there. You couldn't have PrEP. When someone would infect you with HIV, that's it. But now there's PrEP. There are organizations like Worry. So people need to make use of these organizations, but also people need to sensitize others. If you are on this call or if you are having this conversation with us, please don't leave it here. Share it with your other friends, because there are people that will not be here and they need to know this information. Thank you. So lastly, it's to do with the courts of law. And also still under the courts of law, they'll also need the same procedure where they'll ask you, so where is the evidence? Where is this? So most of the times this brought because of hearsay evidence. You didn't capture your evidence very well, and at the end of the day, you're suffering. Thank you so much.
Yes, Angela, speaking about the court and probably evidence, in most cases we've heard that these cases happen, and when they reach court or they begin the process, they don't have evidence. And
Yeah.
in most cases, because survivors don't really know what to do or what not to do or how to probably uh, keep the evidence. So please share with us, with your knowledge as a lawyer, particularly when it comes to with sexual violence, what is considered as evidence, and how can a survivor probably be sure that if I'm sexually raped, I should probably go to the hospital in 24 hours or in 48, so that when they are seeking justice, they freely get the justice, and it is not because of lack of evidence that they don't obtain justice.
Okay, thank you so much. So one of the things that people need to understand is what they were putting on, especially to do with rape and defilement. Sometimes someone raping you, they'll even tear your clothes. So those clothes are one. Then two, that place where the sexual activity was even happening itself. Because sometimes you've had a scuffle, and then that place also considered as evidence. Then, as I told you, there's need for medical attention and also getting the medical report. When you go to the doctor, the report they give you, uh, that report is another evidence where the report will show that this person has been sexually abused or raped or defiled or whichever. Because sometimes people will think that maybe sexual activity means only rape and defilement. These days, we have people that even use sharp objects, because someone can use a sharp object and then till when you get the medical report, you can still prove it.
Thank you so much. I think that this has been a very good learning session, and
This person
we've
was
been.
maybe putting on, okay, so someone can tell you, this girl was putting on a short skirt or a short dress. My friend, dress code has never been anything. Like, it doesn't connect. That's why you see even in Arab countries, people who put on hijab, even in Uganda, we have survivors of sexual harassment who are putting on gomesi. We have survivors of sexual harassment who are babies. Because now imagine a baby can't be indecent. Where they are survivors of sexual harassment and these are babies, you'll find survivors. So dress code is totally out. It has nothing to do with sexual harassment. It doesn't justify sexual harassment. Women bodies are their bodies, so they shouldn't be policed. And that's why instead of blaming girl, focus on issues to do with the perpetrator. Thank you. Thank you, Annette. Yeah.
This Angela, and I think that speaking about sexual violence and how and when and where it happens, I noticed that when you were sharing with us, you spoke about the small things that we don't really take as violence, like you're
Mm-hmm.
moving and someone comes and taps your butt, or you're moving and they begin calling you names. And I feel that because this happens in public, uh, as a bystander or an individual watching, I have a role to play. And briefly, please educate us on what a bystander can do. Because if I'm like we moving and the girl is bypassing probably a border stage, and the man like just suddenly hits them, all I'm moving, and the nearby bush I hear noises coming from, well, I see a man dragging a girl away, and I assume probably it might be sexual abuse. What can I do? How can I respond as a bystander? Because I know that most of these things, some of them happen when people are like seeing in public. So how can a bystander or an individual respond to such?
Thank you so much, Annette. So a bystander, one of the things we need to understand is one of the reasons as to why Annette, Can you hear me?
Yes, Angela, please go on. I think that the network is not clear on Angela's side, but we were asking, in cases where sexual violence happens in public, as a bystander, how can you probably support the survivor? How can you respond to in such cases? And I think that the issues to consider would be, um, first of all, considering the safety of their life, because in most cases, sometimes it can be gang rape, and you clearly notice and know that it's gang rape that is going to happen. Probably you see a few men or boys running to gang rape a girl, and you really want to respond. But the issues to consider first would be your safety as an individual before. So in such cases, you can rally for support from probably the police or the neighbors or other people passing by, so that you can help this person that is at risk of being abused. And also, it's important to, in most cases, we meet girls, probably older men speaking to girls, these girls that are vulnerable and at risk of sexual violence, girls that work as a bartenders, and girls that uh, like girls that work in markets, food vendors, and you know it's always responsible to probably divert these girls. You can call them and speak to them privately, and encourage them not to to be in places where they can be abused, or not to continue conversations that can lead them to abuse, or that can put them in such problems. It can also be a kind of support. Also, it's important to talk to the girls, talk to women, talk to the boys about issues that concern sexual abuse and how they manifest, how they can support. So a lot of people know and understand what it is, and how they can support, and how they can help survivors seek for help and justice. And also the tips on how to respond, and how to help survivors of sexual violence specifically. And the first tip is to believe in them. It's always very, very important to believe in someone when they tell you the story, or when they confide in you, or when they come to you to speak to you about something that has happened to them. In our culture, it's always, even when someone is sharing with you, people always want to look for the loopholes of if someone is lying, or if they're not speaking the truth. So when you're responding to sexual abuse, it's always very, very important for you to believe in someone, believe in their story, and encourage them to share their stories, to encourage them to be firm, encourage them to be to be open to sharing, because it's only when they share, when they can probably seek for help, or even uh, begin to to be supported. So it's always very important to encourage survivors to share their stories. They may feel, of course, shame in the first place, or they may blame themselves about what has happened, and but it's always good to tell them that it's never their fault, and to tell them that they are not alone, to to encourage them to be to share their story so that they can be heard and then they can be supported. And also encourage them to seek for further support, because in most cases there are a lot of things that happen after someone is abused or harassed sexually. In some instances, there are family members that have sexually abused the survivor or the victim. Angela has been sharing, there are people with power, and so it's on the way. A survivor can be discouraged or can be threatened or can be bribed, and it's always very, very important to encourage the survivor to seek for further support. If they probably go to the police and they are for reasons frustrated, it's always good to look at other referral avenues, as Angela was sharing. If the LC cannot help you, you can proceed to the police. If the police can, for some reasons, may not seem helpful, you can go to organizations that work to support survivors of gender-based violence, and they will hear your case, they will support you, they will guide you on what to do and where else to seek for support, because the services that are given to a survivor of sexual abuse are holistic should be holistic in nature, and of course the police itself or cannot solely help the survivor. There are organizations that offer medical support to survivors. There are organizations that offer rehabilitation to survivors, and also there are organizations that can help you probably with resources that will enable you appear in court when you're needed, or even transport people that will witnesses that will share with the court, so that you receive justice as a survivor. So it's important for survivors to know that they can always seek for further support in cases where they are sexually abused, and also to let them know that they're not alone, or it has not only happened to them alone. There are several people that have been abused, and as Angela was sharing, there are also existing laws that can help survivors seek for justice. And for those that have just logged on, this is the Women's Voice, a platform initiated by the Women's Rights Initiative, an organization that works to empower the women and the youth. And we also run a GBV shelter in the Eastern region in Jinja district, and we rehabilitate survivors of GBV. And I'm pleased for everyone out there that has been following us on this conversation. If you know anyone that has been sexually abused, or that has been abused in any way, you can please report the case to us or to the police, as we've been sharing, or to the other organization that handle cases of GBV, so this person is helped. And it's been good having you, everyone that has followed this conversation and this discussion today. Thank you so much for yearning to learn, and we hope that whatever you have learned today, you'll be sharing or you'll be using, so that our society is free from violence. We are not going to be continuing because our time is done, but we encourage you to always follow these conversations. We'll be on next week, same time, same day. Thank you so much. May God bless you, and bye-bye.